So in the challenge I set, we had a list of motorsport scores and we needed to discard the 3 lowest scores and sum the rest. And we saw that we could get started by calling the split method on the string class to give us an IEnumerable sequence of strings, one for each score. Now, if you haven't already tried to solve this yourself, why not pause this video now, launch up LINQ or Visual Studio and give it a go. Okay, have you tried it yet? Well, let's carry on anyway. Now the first thing we need to do is to turn these strings into integers so that we can sort them. And if you remember, the LINQ extension method that lets us transform each element in a sequence is called select. So if we call select and pass in a lambda that uses int.parse to turn each string into an integer, we can now see that our IEnumerable sequence is of type int instead of string. And in fact, we can simplify the syntax a little bit here. We can pass in just the method name instead of needing to use a lambda expression. So next we need to sort our sequence into ascending order, and LINQ lets us do this with the order by method. We have to pass in a lambda expression to indicate what key we want to use for sorting, but in our case it's just the element in the list itself, so it's nice and simple. And now when we run, we see that we have the sequence of scores sorted into ascending order. The next step is to discard the lowest 3 scores, and we can do that by using the skip extension method, which simply jumps over the first n elements, where n is the number of elements we want to skip over. And skip is often used in conjunction with take for paging data, but in our case we only need skip. So if we skip the first 3, we now see that we have a slightly shorter sequence with only the scores that count towards the total. And so the final step is to add all of these numbers together. And again, earlier in this module, we saw that the sum extension method can do that for us. So now we can get the total score for the season, which is 48. Now, I want to point out 2 things here. First, what you're seeing is an example of a LINQ pipeline. We've chained together several of these LINQ extension methods to solve a problem, but in a way that's still very readable. Each line represents a single logical step in solving this problem. And pipelines are one of the most powerful capabilities of LINQ, and in our next module we'll be looking in more detail at them. But I also thought I'd contrast this solution with how I might have solved this problem before I learned LINQ. I'd probably first of all created a brand new list and parsed each string into an integer, and then I'd have sorted that list in place, and then I'd have looped through the new list, but starting from the 4th element, and calculated the total as I went. And as you can see, there's a lot more low-level implementation details here, and I think it's harder to read. It was certainly harder to write. I actually made a silly mistake when I tried to write this without LINQ and got completely the wrong total. But that's the solution to this first LINQ challenge. Let's quickly wrap up what we've learnt in this module.